Hey, welcome back, everyone. Charlie Pankey here again with the Sierra Rec Now podcast. We hope the Sierra is within your sights. Have you been up playing in the snow? It is February here in the Sierra, and we are having a blast at all the new snow here in the Lake Tahoe Basin. And we're super excited about where it may lead into March. Always seem to get a ton of snow in March. I love going up and going like feed chickadees in Lake Tahoe this time of year. It's always a lot of fun to snow. I hope you're wherever you're at, the Sierra is in your future. You're having a great day. Travel safe. We are super excited about today's show. We have just an amazing guest with us today. Kind of a highlight show for me for the year at the moment. I have Alice Ford with me. She is an author. She's a videographer. She's a stunt woman. She has a show on PBS about Alice's Adventures. Alice's Adventures, I think that said that right. All about travel around the world, but she has a unique love for the Sierra and some of our national parks. And we're going to be diving into that today. So if you like Joshua Tree National Park, Death Valley, Eastern Sierra, this show's for you today. We hope you buckle in for about 30 minutes with Alice. And Alice, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here and kind of share my love for the natural world.
Absolutely. You and I just met. You're from Los Angeles area, so our prayers and thoughts to all your community down there. It's been
Thank you.
quite a rough start to the year down there in Los Angeles, and a lot of our readership who watches us online and stuff comes from Los Angeles to this year, so we're reaching out to them as well. So I got to read your bio, and I got super geeked out and excited because you're doing this video piece on PBS with your adventures. You've got all kinds of guides and different things you're doing, and then you said stunt woman. And I got to start there, to be honest with you, because I have never met a stunt woman. That's pretty cool. Tell me where your background for the outdoor comes. Where stunt woman fall into it? You've won some awards, for digital stuff, but maybe give us a little background of who you are and where that all came from.
Absolutely. So I actually grew up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. My dad was a mountaineer, rock climber, river guide in the Grand Canyon, kind of anything that you can imagine as far as outdoor adventure, my dad did.
Okay.
And so I grew up with him, obviously, as my father. We had a lot of land. We spent a lot of time in the mountains when I was a child. And um, he died about 11 years ago. And when that happened, I really felt this need to get back out into the mountains. And that's what kind of spurred me to start creating content, to start trying to get a TV show going, to share my lifelong love for the planet, for nature, for wildlife, and really all the things that were instilled to me in my upbringing as far as just kind of connecting with nature out in the mountains. I also did three sports in college.
Okay.
So I
Wow.
should mention that. And so my whole life, I really did a lot of just adventuring and exploring. I did gymnastics, track and field. I was a skier, a diver as well. That carried forward to college. And so those things together all were a really good background for stunt performing as well. And I've lived in a lot of different states, I think 11, if
Wow.
I remember the count, but always really loved performing and competing. And I think anyone listening probably knows, you don't make much money in athletics, or you didn't when I was in college. So becoming a stunt woman was a great way for me to feel like I still was competing in sports, but actually
Okay.
making a living. So that's kind of how I got into stunt performing. And as far as travel and adventure travel, that's just always been such a lifelong passion of mine. And I really wanted to share it with more people and inspire more people to kind of get out and explore.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I started on YouTube, and that eventually led to my show on PBS.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah.
Is
So
that show still running on PBS now?
yeah, I have a
Okay.
second season which drops in March.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
yeah, so the first
Okay.
season was mostly based on West Coast kind of national parks.
Okay.
And the second season is all international destinations. So it's a lot of national parks around the world. I take viewers to Antarctica, to Chile and Patagonia,
Whoa.
to Uganda, Tanzania, Norway, Finland, back into Canada for another kind of really neat backpacking route, and a bunch of other destinations too.
That's great. Actually, I just saw on Instagram today on one of your posts your trail in Patagonia to the W.
Yeah.
And I just did an article in our winter edition that launched a couple weeks ago about an opportunity down in that region. I have a friend from exchange student who opened a VRBO down there, and
Oh,
so
neat.
we just talked about what an adventure down there would look like, and he sent me a bunch of pictures of the W and that trail. So that was really kind of hit home with me a little bit. So
Amazing.
that's really cool. Hey, so as you're looking at video creation and outdoor experience, that's kind of why I started Sierra Rick Magazine 10 years ago. Is wanting people to discover more of the Sierra. I kind of honed in just on the Sierra Nevada, living here in Minden, Nevada. What is it about that you found maybe with your guests or people you've spoken with about adding adventure travel and lifestyle to living that you find valuable? What is it that you think you can share in that world?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, obviously I've been a lifelong athlete, but I think that we forget that our brains are also gigantic muscles, and our brain and our bodies need to be physically and mentally challenged just as much as, any other element in our lives. And I don't think that we typically do that to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
as human beings. But adding adventure into your travels does that. It physically challenges you, it mentally challenges you, and you come away with not just having like a travel experience, but having this whole physical and mental experience that not only you will remember forever, but actually improves your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so those to me are kind of the most important reasons why I have fallen so in love with adventure travel, is just the kind of all encompassing positive benefits that you get from doing things that are physically challenging while you're also experiencing a new place, learning about a new culture, and just having an education in something new or a new place.
You just said something that caught my attention. Is I always travel new places. There's always a little bit of a getting kind of aware to your surroundings, and especially the physical nature, whether you're climbing or going off a cliff or whatever it is. Is as there in your all your filming that you've been doing, have you run into challenges that have really pushed you kind of to your limits, like you didn't expect that, or maybe you were mentally prepared, but it was even worse than you thought? As far as the challenge was going to be.
Yeah, there's definitely been some difficult moments, for people listening, and if you're not familiar with me, I mostly do solo travel.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I shoot all of my own content. So there's always things that are difficult, that are unexpected. When it comes to that, I have to make sure that I'm making the correct decisions, that I'm not pushing myself into dangerous situations. And I need to also not have an ego, because that can sometimes get in the way of, surviving
Absolutely.
and being able to come home at the end of the day. So definitely there's almost always a learning experience on every trip, especially, I got started 10 years ago and I really didn't have as much knowledge about even just being out in the outdoors alone
Mm-hmm.
or filming things. And so, broken cameras, forgotten microphones, broken microphones, hail, bad weather, you name it. I've
All those.
experienced almost all of it.
That's incredible. We spend enough time outdoors. We're all going to run into it. But I really appreciate you saying the safety part of it, right? Is we hear too many stories now in social media days of people getting in accidents because they're just not paying attention to their surroundings or taking risks they don't need to be taking. I did a 40-mile trek through Yosemite with my son last year, and we came out on top of Nevada Falls coming out of the wilderness. And I'll never forget it. Just the bravado of guys standing as close to the edge of the rock trying to get that perfect selfie. And I do a lot of content work too, and I just go, it's just not worth it, right? That
Yeah.
there's just not enough views on Instagram or TikTok to kill yourself over,
Absolutely. And I will say, I have turned around on many summits.
Yep.
I've gotten near the top and the weather has gotten bad, or I'm maybe feeling like something feels wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
I will turn around. I
Right.
will be the first to say that the mountain still will be there tomorrow.
Yep. Yep.
I may not.
Yep.
So if
I,
it's a question about whether or not I should come back a different day, I usually just, I'm on the safer side
Yeah,
always.
I'll show my age here a little bit, but part of a life philosophy I've always kept is that you remember a man from Snowy River movie back from the '80s. They just talked about how the mountains are always trying to kill you. And if you just kind of keep that perspective when you're traveling, it's like, yeah, you need to be respectful of nature a little bit. So,
Yes, absolutely.
well, cool. Our show's only a half hour, so we're going to run out of time with all the things we want to talk about today. I really wanted to jump in. You mentioned to me when we first connected that you have a love for national parks and Joshua Tree and Death Valley are places you've covered quite a
Mhm.
bit. I personally have never been to Joshua Tree National Park. Death Valley I've been a couple of times. I was just wondering if we could maybe dive into those a little bit. Maybe give you an open-ended question here about what are your favorite things about those two national parks, for example, and then maybe we can talk about some of your hidden gems and favorites.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with Joshua Tree because it is the closest to Los Angeles. Joshua Tree is it's a fantastic little desert park. You know, you have three different desert ecosystems that actually kind of meet in Joshua Tree.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a lot of different kind of desert plant and animal life that comes together. There are some really cool rock formations, some great hiking. There's also some fantastic camping areas in the park, which I definitely recommend if you are going to go experience Joshua Tree to spend the night out in the park at least one night because it's also a dark sky reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a night photographer, there's some fantastic places where you can do like the Milky Way with the cholla cactuses in the foreground, and it's just absolutely fantastic. There's also a really great ranger-led tour of the old Keys Ranch, and some really interesting history as well from some of the kind of people that lived in the park before and during it was becoming a national park. And that's
Okay.
what at the Keys Ranch you can learn a little bit more about some of these like homesteaders
Mm-hmm.
that lived in the area, didn't want to leave, eventually got forced out by the national park. So the Keys Ranch is one of these houses where some of these prospectors lived in the
Okay.
1940s and before. So really interesting stuff there. There's also like the Hall of Horrors, which is a little slot canyon that you can kind
Mm-hmm.
of get lost in
Yes.
or try not to get lost
Try not
in.
to. I've read about that one.
Yeah. And obviously the Joshua trees, which are, you know, these gigantic yucca trees. And they're really interesting and fascinating to look at. And if you're a geology nerd, there's tons of really interesting like rock history and things like that that you can kind of dive deeper into. And I
Mm-hmm.
also really love the biological crust, which if people don't know what that
I don't know
is,
what that is. Yeah,
the top level of deserts is actually a living organism. It's
okay.
formed over hundreds and thousands of years. It's all these little tiny microorganisms that basically take in plant matter and form this kind of like hardened surface on top of the dirt. It's what
Okay.
fights off erosion and also like flooding. So it's really important that you stay on the trails at these parks too.
Oh, that's good information. So in Joshua Tree, you've got the slot canyons. I know you got they got the trees. Do you have like any hidden gems? Like if you're going to go visit for the first time, like if I want to go down this, what time of year should I visit? And then like what is like maybe a 1 day itinerary for first timers that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I think that if you're just had one day in the park, I would definitely enter kind of on the northern side of the park, which is the Joshua Tree and Yucca Valley side. It's kind of the more popular area as well, but that's where the majority of trails and main points of interest are going to be found is kind of in that northern section of the park. And I would definitely start with a hike along the Hidden Valley Trail, which takes you through kind of a mixture of desert ecosystems. So you will have some Joshua trees in there. You will find some variety of cactus, which is always really fascinating. You walk down into a little valley that actually used to be a place where people that lived there about 100 years ago used to have cattle. So you see a lot of different variety in there. Next to that is also a really great place for rock climbing. So if you did want a little bit of adventure, you could book a guided rock climbing climb in this area as
Okay.
well. It's a really great spot to do that. I would definitely stay for the evening hours and go into the Cholla Cactus Garden and do some nighttime photography or just some stargazing. And the road that actually takes you to the Cholla Cactus Garden is probably the prettiest drive in the park, too.
Okay.
So I would definitely do those things. And if you're got a 4x4 vehicle, there's some fantastic off-road trails that you can do that you don't have to do a lot of mileage on, but you could just
Mm-hmm.
do a couple miles, like on the Geology Tour Road is a really good one too.
That's really great information. When I was talking one day, I would want to stay the night for the stars as well, because I know when I took my son for the first time to Death Valley, we got there at nighttime for a stargazing event and then stayed the next day, which what really changed it for him. It's like Death Valley is like one of his favorite places on earth, and it was actually one of the first times we actually stopped and saw like a Joshua tree, like up on the kind of eastern edge of the park. It's like, wow, what are those trees? And we I grew up in the Cascade Mountains in Oregon. We come from the Midwest. We'd never seen anything like it. It was quite a unique experience. So, um, have you if you were going to stay there multiple days, like what would be like in your mind a perfect stay at Joshua Tree State Park if you wanted to go on family vacation or adventure traveling?
I think it depends on what kind of traveler you are. If you are a camper, I love the campground at Skull Rock. This
Okay.
is kind of centrally in the middle of the northern section of the park, so you are farther away from, let's say, the town of Joshua Tree. You're more inside the park. So if you want that really good park experience, that's one of
Mhm.
my favorite campgrounds. And from there, you can drive, over to the Troy Cactus Garden in the middle of the night and take photos. But the stargazing there at that campground is also really great. Now, if you're a hoteler or an Airbnb, I would say in the town of Joshua Tree, you could stay at Auto Camp, which is these like glamping, yeah,
Yeah.
Airstreams that
Yeah.
you can rent, which are really fun. And there's fantastic Airbnbs all throughout Joshua Tree and Yucca Valley that are really great for families. Most have hot tubs and swimming pools. If you're wanting to have a little bit more of a luxury stay, and there are not a lot of restaurants in Joshua Tree, so
Yeah.
I would say definitely plan out your meals ahead of time. Go to the grocery store, or plan to just kind of have something a little bit less fancy as far as
Yeah.
dinners and things go.
Great tip. Great tip. You bring your camp gear almost on that.
Yes.
So, let's talk real quick on wildlife. What kind of wildlife have you seen in Joshua Tree? What is there a favorite that you look for every time you're down there?
I think,
What?
yeah, in Joshua Tree, you're going to see more small animals,
Mhm.
coyote, rabbits. Definitely watch your step for rattlesnakes if you are going to be there kind of as the weather gets warmer into the summertime. You do want to make sure you're not off trail, walking on any random holes. And you also want to make sure you're just being aware of your surroundings, because rattlesnakes do blend into the sand,
Yes.
and you definitely don't want to step on any while you're out there. Um, Either. And then as far as other wildlife, yeah, I mean, a coyote from time to time. And I haven't really seen any other big wildlife. There
Okay.
are mountain lions out there. I've never seen one personally.
Yeah.
But yeah,
They see
they're
you.
out there.
You
Yeah.
don't you don't want to see a mountain lion. They can see you. Just stay out there. Hey, is there like a best time to go to Joshua? Like I love sending people to Death Valley now, like in February or in November. Like the kind of corner seasons are my favorite time. Do you have a favorite time for Joshua Tree?
Yeah, my favorite time for Joshua Tree is definitely between around now to mid-April. And then also, I would say like October, November.
Okay, perfect. So about you're kind of similar.
Avoid
It,
the summers.
Yeah, got it exactly. So let's do a quick transition to Death Valley. There, real quick. I saw that you were there last year in your Instagram and some of your stuff.
Yes.
Do you have any tips or favorites on Death Valley that you'd like to share with the audience on that?
Yeah, Death Valley is a great park. I think you definitely need a couple of days in Death Valley,
Yeah.
unless you just want to quickly do some of the highlights. If you really want to see Death Valley, I recommend spending a couple of days, getting a vehicle that can do 4x4 roads, and also either bringing extra tires or making sure you have stuff to fix flats.
Yep.
Because a lot of the roads in Death Valley, if you're not doing just these kind of short highlight areas where it's easy to access, are long, bumpy dirt roads where you're not going to have cell phone reception, and the likelihood of getting a flat tire are high.
All right.
So I think some of my favorites in Death Valley are definitely Badwater Basin,
Mhm.
where last year I went and it was flooded, which was really neat.
Oh, neat.
So we haven't had a lot of rain this year, so I doubt that that will happen this year. That was kind of like a once in 20-year
Okay.
event. So we'll see if that happens again. Artist Palette, which is nearby there, which is all these different kaleidoscopes of different minerals that have kind of blanketed the hillsides. And there's a fun scenic drive that goes through there.
Mhm.
Titus Canyon is fantastic, but
Love
that is
Titus
a
Canyon.
4x4 road. It's a dirt, goes through like this small canyon, and it's really neat.
It may not actually be open yet again. Remember that washout from last year? They closed it down. So if you're listening to this video, check the website before you look at that because it was destroyed in the bottom end. So been through Titus. Also, it's beautiful. That's a beautiful drive. I highly recommend
Yeah,
it. So,
absolutely. That's totally right. And
yeah.
I think, as you said, for Death Valley, we have had a lot of damages over the last 2 to 3 years. So it's always great for any national park to always check the national park website to see what the current closures are for all of these parks. One of my other favorite areas in Death Valley is Racetrack Playa. I know when I was there last year at this time, that was actually not accessible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it may be now, but I will have to check that website. So
I believe you're right. I believe it's open. I also believe they're going to be doing day tours of Scotty's Castle this summer. Again, they finally are going to be able to take people back there and show the recovery efforts of Scotty's Castle.
amazing.
Yeah, so pretty neat. Death Valley is one of the things I took my son for that trip. We came in on the south side, actually, came over, I forget what the name of that pass is called, and we came in Badwater Basin was like the first thing we got to, but we got there in the middle of the night, so we walked down the basin, coyotes yipping all around us, and stars like you couldn't believe, and then stayed in Mesquite Flats there, and then next day just got into
Yes,
the sand dunes together.
the sand
And then
dunes.
a couple years later, I went back with a 4x4 group. Are you ever going to go with a 4x4 tour group that have all the right equipment? They know how to travel Death Valley. They got all the dirt roads. They lower the tire pressure, get over the bumps faster. They have spares with them everywhere. And that was an incredible event to be able to experience Death Valley on the back roads with those guys and see the landscape. It's
That
quite
sounds
amazing. So,
incredible.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, again, it's the fact that I went with somebody that was prepared, right? I've
Yes,
hiked in Death
it makes all the
Valley.
difference.
It makes all the difference because they had all the tools, they knew what to do with the tires. The travel experience was incredible. So
Did you ever go to Rhyolite?
I've not been to Rhyolite
Okay, so
itself.
for
Yeah.
yeah, so for those listening to, Rhyolite is an old ghost town. It's
Mm-hmm.
towards Nevada
Yep.
when
It's
you
right
leave
on the
Death Valley.
border. Yeah.
Yep. And it's pretty incredible to be able to park there, walk through there. There's an old train depot. There's some really cool old building that was built completely out of old glass bottles,
Yeah.
and some other remains of old homes from a town that actually used to exist there,
Yep.
I think in the 1800s.
I think there's still a guy up there calling himself the mayor of Rhyolite. I think he still does tours up there, if I'm not mistaken. He may live in that town in Nevada there with the gas station. But I watched a video of him on PBS, I think,
Oh, nice.
not too long ago. That's great. Death Valley again. What a great trip. It's a good time to go right now. The snow's coming over the Sierra, and it will be a little bit colder, but it is a good time to camp. Death Valley is a little bit warmer, probably by a good 10, 15 degrees
Yes,
in Death Valley itself to stay there. So now you also told me on our little talk that we had in email and stuff that you love the Eastern Sierra.
I
And
do.
so I love the Eastern Sierra. We've got about 8 minutes left on the show here. Let's dive into some of your favorite backcountry stuff. You're obviously an outdoor person. Do you have a favorite outdoor activity that you love to do in the mountains? Are you
I
a
mean,
backpacker, climber?
backpacking,
Are you a
yeah.
peak person? Or give me a little bio of your
Yeah, sure.
backyard.
I'm definitely a peak person. I love climbing big summits. Actually, today I was making a list of the tallest mountain in every state,
Oh yeah, okay.
which ones I hadn't done.
Nice. Yeah, I'm opposite
Um,
of you. I'm not a peak. I've done peaks, but I don't crave them. I like river valleys and just fall in the river and the lakes and stuff. So
but I do love backpacking routes as well, and have really started to do more and more of them over the last couple of years. I've done the Cottonwood Lakes, which is over in the Eastern
beautiful.
Sierras, which is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And that can take all the way up to Mount Whitney, which is fantastic. But yeah, I'm a little bit of a mix. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'm out to do peaks, and sometimes I'm out to just kind of hit the trail. I love a good day hike
Well,
too.
let's talk peaks because I'm not a peak person. I can't really give much advice that way. Whitney's the easy one. Have you done other peaks in this year that are worth people noting and tell me a little about them?
Oh, you know what? I actually haven't done any other peaks over
Okay,
in the Eastern
that's fair.
Sierras.
Yeah.
I
That's I didn't ask you ahead of time. That's a fair question to know. So, but you've done Whitney.
have done Whitney.
Tell me about your Whitney experience
Oh,
on the trail. Yeah, I saw that face.
that
I've seen
mountain
that
is.
before. Did you come in from the east side, or did you come out of Cottonwood Lakes and go up on
Yeah,
the
I
west side?
came out of the east side, yeah. So I think the hardest thing, and for to do Mount Whitney, so many people come from Los Angeles,
Yep.
right? We're at sea level. I mean,
Yep.
there's just no way to not get altitude sickness unless you go and spend 3 or 4 days in Lone Pine first
Yep.
or Bishop.
Which is not
And
a bad idea.
then there's just no way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's physically impossible unless you've been hiking in Colorado or some other place at altitude for several days. And I think that's what makes Mount Whitney really difficult, because it's almost impossible to acclimate appropriately. You know, I've done a lot of 14ers in Colorado. I've done big summits in other places all around the world, 19,000, 20,000 feet, so
Right.
much higher than Mount Whitney. But Mount Whitney is just really hard just because of the short amount of time you have to acclimate. So I spent the night at basically the kind of the bottom of the trailhead, which the campground name is evading me right now.
Yeah, me too.
Got up at, I don't know, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., hit the trail. So hiked in the dark. I went by myself.
Okay.
In hindsight, I should have spent the night halfway up the mountain. But I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
I definitely started getting altitude sickness at the top of the switchbacks.
Okay.
And just had a horrible headache. And I knew, I know like altitude sickness because I've hiked all these other big summits. So yeah, those last 2 miles or so were really, really, really miserable.
Yeah.
And I just felt absolutely atrocious.
Does it go away once you see the peak, get to the peak though, and you sit there, does the elation go away? No.
No, the headache was still there.
Gotcha.
And yeah, and then, you know, it's 21 miles round trip. So it's just it's honestly, no one should be trying to do it as a day hike.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the reasons I haven't done it. I hike a lot. I've done plenty of 20-mile days, but never 20-mile days with that much elevation the same day. You know, I'd love to see it someday, and maybe I'll plan it. But again, since I don't crave the peaks, it's like yeah, okay, I've seen the picture.
It is beautiful, and I went the first week of October, and so it was right after the permit season ended. So I mean, that was a nice benefit. It wasn't very crowded, which was great as well. And I will say, like, we do have some issues on Mount Whitney just with human waste and things like that. You know, there used to be bathrooms, they got rid of them and put wag bags instead. But the problem is most hikers leave the wag bags on the mountain and then they really don't biodegrade. So, so yeah, we need to, you know, figure out some different solutions because that mountain is so popular.
Yeah, it's a personal challenge for me. I'm a dog lover. I love taking my dog on the trail. Dog bags the same way. I hate the plastic bag. Just stop doing it. Bring a shovel. Figure out a different solution. But I understand the other side of it too. Is that like we got a lot of people going in the outdoors these days, and so we've got to be a little more responsible than we were in 1980s when there was as many people out there, right? So it's a different world that we live in. So.
Exactly. Leaving plastic bags full of, you know, your poop under a rock, not
great. Work. It just doesn't work, right? Like plastic bags forever, right? Unfortunate. That's it. Any other places on the Eastern Sierra that you just love visiting or like your favorite? We're running out of time. I'm just rushing as long. I apologize. But
I love all the lakes around Mammoth. I love that whole area. I mean, there are so many trails. There are so many, you know, little glacier lakes, alpine lakes that are just absolutely beautiful. Pretty much in any season. I go back there as often as I can. And obviously Yosemite and Sequoia on the other side of the Sierras there as well. Just amazing.
You can't do enough of it, right? I always have a hard time getting past Yosemite, coming from north of Yosemite. We get there, it's like, how do we pass that? And I talk to Mammoth all the time. It's like, I really should come down there more often because Yosemite, I've been there so many times. But I got to go down to Bishop last year and go backpacking into the Bishop Pass to the Chocolate Lakes loop up there. And it's the first time I had been able to go backpacking down there besides just day hiking. It was really quite a great experience. I look forward to getting back down that.
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to do the John Muir Trail, the whole thing.
I have a good friend who's done it, and he tells me the same thing. He says, you know, I know you've hiked a lot, but you just need to do it. I go, okay, I got to figure it out now. But I want to start actually from outside of Yosemite on Sonora Pass and come through Yosemite to the John Muir, hit it that way. I always say I don't know why anybody would ever start in Yosemite Valley because that climb from there to Cathedral Range that is way too much.
And I did it kind of backwards last year in the spring. I did from the top of the pass down. My brain just stopped working.
From Tuolumne Meadows down to the valley?
I went up to Clouds Rest, and then I did Half Dome, and then down into the valley.
I see. My son and I, we started at Tuolumne. We went up to Vogelsang, over Vogelsang Pass and then came down the valley through Merced and that way. So we did 40 miles that way. So it was a
Amazing.
phenomenal trip coming that direction. 100% agree on that. So fantastic. Let me keep you on hold here. Our show is wrapping up. I'd like to be courteous to you and our guest here on this half-hour show. I do have a sponsor. Want to shout out to Visit Carson Valley real quick, who is my sponsor. We can't do any of this without you guys. It's our home base for all of our adventures, where I go out to Yosemite, where Alpine County, Lake Tahoe. But I do stay here. I hiked here last Saturday, 5-mile loop on dirt trails, because we still have dirt in the wintertime. It's a great place to hike. But let me let them do a little quick shout out, and I have 3 more questions for you, Alice. Okay? I did have a question with someone last week. I'll just shout out that lake that guy's doing the paddleboard. That's not Lake Tahoe. That's Topaz Lake. It's right on the border of California and Nevada. It's actually part of our county here. But one of the other reasons why people come to the Carson Valley is we have pretty much it all, and we're only 15 minutes from Tahoe too. So, all right, Alice, here's the quiz time. Okay, thank you, Juan, for all your guide experience. Highly want to recommend people check you out online, your Instagram and your media pages, PBS for your shows. Didn't you have a book or some guidebooks that you printed as well? Do you want to shout those out real quick before I ask a question?
Sure. I have a book called 10 Steps to Happiness, actually.
That's
Not
what it's called.
travel-related.
That's what it was. I apologize. I forgot the title.
And yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Alice Ford Adventures. On PBS, my show is called Alice's Adventures on Earth, and that's kind of what it is on Instagram and Facebook too.
It would tell me a little bit about that book real quick. I'll just use that as one of my questions. Give me a little snapshot of what the 10 secrets of happiness are.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of a quick guide to restructuring your life to figure out what brings you joy and make more time for that.
Perfect.
Take away the things that, bring you negativity, make sure you're promoting your health and your wellness and eating well, dieting, exercising, all of those kinds of things. And also decluttering, which is a really good way to kind of make space for the happiness that you need.
My wife is all over that. She hates my office. Matter of fact, too much clutter. She says you got to declutter. I agree with that. And backpacking and hiking the Sierra has changed my life when I just dove into that. Right, so I completely agree with you. I have to check that book out. So, all right, 3 questions real quick. We'll go fast. Pretend your bag's packed right behind you. You're going to the Sierra to go play in the mountains. Where are you going and why?
I'm going to go back to the area near Lake Tahoe. Okay. And probably spend 4 or 5 days just backpacking. Maybe do the Tahoe Crest Trail on foot. I actually did some of it on bike last summer. So.
Oh, nice, very good. That's good choice. Tahoe Rim Trail is awesome. Desolation Wilderness, good choice there. When I go hiking and I'm out for a long adventure, I always get hungry. There's both a combination of what kind of trail foods we like, and then when you get off trail, like what's that food you crave. Like I always crave a cheeseburger, French fry, and milkshake when I'm hiked a long time. Is there a trail food or an after adventure food that's just like your go-to?
Yeah, I'd say my on-trail snack is like dried mangoes or like a dried fruit.
I like it, yep.
And then my off-trail is usually, I want to say, I usually crave like a grilled cheese.
There you go. I like that. Cheese is key, right? Is that rich flavor? And I like dried apricots. So you and I are on the same there.
That or like a big bowl of pasta.
Pasta's good. You can't go wrong with the pasta. I actually like pasta the weekday before, kind of that carb load before I'm going. That's a good choice. All right, final one. We're all gearheads in some way, right? We always have a piece of gear, whether it be a piece of clothing or a gadget we like taking. You're going and doing your outdoor adventures. You're trying to be safe. What's your go-to piece of gear you never leave home without?
My visor.
Your visor, okay. Is it a visor or is it like a brim hat or?
It's a visor.
Okay. Very good. I don't
never leave home without it.
Well, you're a Los Angeles kid. I'll just call it that. A visor. That sounds Los Angeles to me. I like it very much. So, Alice,
I can't put a ponytail in a hat. So
this is true. Although there are some hats out there nowadays. But Alice, it has been wonderful speaking with you. I do appreciate you giving us time. We know you're busy and you have a lot going on. We wish you the best of luck in your next adventure. Hope your show on PBS this year is super successful and your book takes off. I have to get a copy of that from you. Anyways, but thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And wherever you're at today, whether you're driving in Los Angeles, you're heading to the mountains, you're in San Francisco, or you're here in our Carson Valley area, we hope the Sierra is in your future. We hope you're safe. Hope the snow continues to fall until April, and then we get ready to go backpacking season. Wherever you're at, have a great day, and I hope your adventures are your best.